Hello everyone, welcome back for Devlog 1. This week was largely dedicated to further prototyping the two elements of Earth and Air, and I've made quite a few adjustments and ran into some interesting issues along the way. The Earth elemental is quite a bit more challenging than I originally thought, as what I was originally hoping for was to have a wall walking ability, allowing the elemental to go underground and simply scale up walls. I did get this working. However, the difficulty I'm having with this feature is for specific slopes and weird hitches in the ground. As you can see, going over certain areas of the ground causes the elemental to shoot into the air, like it's taking some sort of jump and then falling back onto the wall. One of the interesting workarounds to make this work was by changing the direction of gravity. As you can see from it jumping in the air and then falling back down, because the gravity's direction has changed whenever it goes on a different slope. The hope was to cause the elemental to stay planted on the surface, but it seems that it's being launched in the air whenever it collides weirdly with the surface, and I'm not really sure how to prevent that. I also added the code to ensure that the elemental is traveling perpendicular to the ground, so I'm really not sure why it's colliding weirdly with things, but I don't know, still having the issue. I did also try floor snapping, but this also causes the player to just dramatically slow down, so not really sure how to handle this issue at the moment. But I will be showing the code at the end of the discussion as well, if you guys are interested in that. One of the other things that I added, because I thought I was going to keep this wall walking feature, was these little teleport spots, these little wall corner entries. They're supposed to be placed on sharp corners because you can't really go over sharp corners without flying off of them. And so they're supposed to be matched with each other where they have an ID and then they have a teleport ID. And then when you enter one of them, you teleport over to the other one and vice versa. So it'd allow you theoretically to teleport from around a sharp corner. And my thought was to have some sort of animation where the character goes underground and then they appear on the other corner. I might still keep that, we'll see. But for now, what I ultimately decided to just have specific areas of the ground where the element could travel underground. This was at least a workaround for now for dealing with the issues I'm having. But also I think that the way I had it before was potentially way too overpowered, since you could just kind of scale up whatever you wanted to and would probably be able to bypass most challenges anyway. So with this change of having specific ground areas you can go underground, I also introduced new types of walls that you can traverse under, and you can only traverse under them when you are underground. So thought this might add a new barrier that will require the player to actually change to the Earth Elemental, create a little more dynamic puzzles in the game. A fun feature that I didn't struggle as much with, however, was the new ability to throw rocks, buildable rocks in fact. These can be held and launched in the direction of the mouse, allowing the elemental to overcome obstacles and build their own platforms in the game. As you can see, it's actually quite a lot of fun to play with. It's pretty cool. It allows you to get over certain obstacles. I did limit how many rocks you can have because otherwise that would be kind of crazy. But it probably still needs some adjustment because, as you can see, I can still build pretty much indefinitely. Even with only 5 blocks, I could theoretically just kind of keep building straight up forever. So I might need to make some tweaks and adjustments on it, but overall I'm pretty happy with where the Earth Elemental is at. I think I might add the ability to unlock new elemental abilities as the game progresses, potentially behind like bosses or behind like really hard puzzles. And then I could do the unlocking to sort of reintroduce the ability to actually walk on walls. Maybe I'll have the surface beyond walls and you can only go into that surface when you've unlocked the ability or something. I don't know. We'll see. As for the air elemental, I didn't change much at the moment, as I was starting to focus more on creating a real environment and trying to test out what I did with the earth elemental. I did change a couple things, like the gravity on the air element now maxes out the falling speed, so you can only fall so fast. And additionally, the air elemental is now controllable while you are falling. I figured that this would add a unique feature of trying to land on certain spots and allows a little more, it allows a little bit more control when you're jumping, since that's one of the struggles with the other elements. and I think like doing a jump with the air elemental and then quickly changing to a different element will be an interesting sort of mechanic of the game as well. I did create this little test level and added some simple features to it, like the little wall traverse and then going under the wall just for testing purposes. And really, this is like the biggest roadblock that I faced this week. I think I need to spend a lot more time this coming week developing more interactable environments rather than just the elements. Since these environments will be what the player actually interacts with to solve problems anyway, it's really important that I actually start developing the more interactable environments, like having fire or like these walls that you can go under, stuff like that. Some more interesting stuff. Probably add the air elemental's ability to do a wind projectile similar to my earth elemental's rock throw. But yeah, that'll be what the focus is on this upcoming week. This is the part where I'm going to dive into the code for those of you who are interested, and we'll go over how exactly everything is working at the moment. So a lot of what is actually being changed and tracked for the player is all handled in this player controller, and it's done through these enums. And mind you, one of the nice things of prototyping is that I can kind of just throw this together and allows me to figure out what exactly how I want to design in the future and how I don't want to be. So right now, bear in mind a lot of this is going to be a little messy, and that's totally fine. It's just to get it working at the moment. It'll be redesigned when I actually get into the planning phase. But a lot of what happens whenever you're switching elements is there's these constants that are used as references for what is switching in the background, and that controls how the actual element is playing, essentially. And then when we get to here, we are looking at our actual gravity here. So this is where we're tracking the actual direction of the gravity dir, and then also what some other gravity factors like the multiplier, which makes the simulated weight and whatnot. And of course, switching element changes all of that stuff as well. So the meat of this whole bit of code here is in the physics process function, which calls a lot of other subfunctions. But most of what's happening is in here. So here if we're determining if we're like X controllable, and what this means is this is what's used to allow us to move in our flight. And then also for each element, we'll have a handler for handling that element's input. Of course, mostly just Earth right now. And then we're actually determining our gravity here. So we actually have like kind of two separate things here for gravity. We have my own simulated gravity versus gravity that is handled when there's an actual when I need to use the engine's gravity, essentially. So if there's an actual gravity direction, or if, sorry, not a gravity direction, when I'm actually the earth elemental underground, I'm amping up the rate of gravity quite significantly, so I don't necessarily want to be using the out of the box gravity. I'm using my own custom gravity, but otherwise I'm just using the out of the box gravity, and then I'm using the gravity direction to determine how to apply the gravity, essentially. And then of course handling jumps, swapping the elements, and then is on floor. This allows you to actually move the direction you're wanting to go. So we're determining the orthogonal of our gravity direction, and that's how I'm determining what the right vector is, and that's then used along with our actual input to determine what direction we're wanting to go, which orthogonal just means we're getting the perpendicular vector of the direction of the gravity force. And then diving into these, the earth input, this is for firing a projectile. I'm just doing a little Boolean flag to determine how long it's been held, and then the power is related to how long it's been held, the direction being where your mouse is at in the game. So this is one of those things that I probably need to change because you can actually bug the game out if you stack it on top of yourself. So there probably needs to be some limitations that you can't throw it on top of yourself. But then this is where we are actually changing to our different states of going underground or above ground. And then swapping elements is handled here. Swapping between earth and air. Handle slope change. So this is actually where I'm determining the gravity direction. So the even though I've adjusted it to be that there's only certain areas you can go underground, you can still, the logic is still there to capture the ability to walk on walls. I just haven't removed it. And this is the logic here. Because what actually happens for the elemental is that it's the max floor angle actually changes to treat everything as a floor. So when you go to Earth Elemental and you go underground, it makes the max floor angle extremely high. So theoretically, you'll just be able to walk on anything as if it's a floor. So once you get onto the floor, it gets the normal of that floor, and then it's doing a little math. It's just negating the x and the y of that to get the direction that gravity should be for it, and then it's setting that as it's also changing the rotation of the player. So what you get is the sort of ability to walk on walls, and your gravity is on that. And due to this little piece up here, where we're getting the orthogonal, then we're getting the correct vector as well for what we should be traveling. So this is the part where I don't know why it's still clipping into the wall weirdly, but is what it is. Handling glide controls, this is the following one. This is for the air elemental, of course, and this just allows you to go back and forth in the air while you're gliding, essentially, or falling. And then lastly, toggle earth mode. This is actually toggling between the underground state and the above ground state. So that's pretty much it. There's a little bit of code for other stuff, but it's not super important. Like the corner entry point just finds its respective teleport ID, and it puts the player there whenever, sets their position there whenever they enter. The Earth Stone. So for those curious, the Earth Stone actually starts as a throwable rigid body. So it's actually a rigid body, and then whenever it lands on a body, it turns into a static body. That way, I can have it be acted on by gravity without it needing to like program the gravity in myself. And then when it lands, you can actually walk on it. So, and the static body is pretty straightforward. All it is just an ID. And the reason for this is that this is how I'm keeping track of the rocks that are currently in the game, and that way I can go back through and destroy any older ones whenever you get to the max amount that you're allowed to have. So there's a lot of changes I would like to make to this when I go to the actually development side of it, but for right now, I'm going to keep it pretty messy. Mainly, I'm probably going to turn these into like actual objects or just structs that can be used pretty polymorphic. That way, it's a lot easier to like add the elements and change them out. And then I think the logic for how this process flow will go will probably be a lot more like calls like this. I think I'll probably also have some of these variables be in like a global variables script rather than in the player script. But like I said, for now, this works. So that's it. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching. Hope you got some value out of this, and see you guys next Sunday.